Jenny gazed into my eyes. Hers were deep blue, the colour of the morning sky straight overhead. "Jenny," I whispered, struggling to speak past the lump in my throat. I touched her hair, as soft as ever. Her hand slid up my spine and cradled the back of my head, pulling me closer to her. "Don't leave me, please, don't ever leave me." Heat spread through me, seeming to come from her hands. Eventually she eased out of my arms, trembling, and took a step back. This gave me my first proper look at her. She seemed much as she had when I'd last seen her alive. 5'9", medium build, round face, brown hair, longer than she usually kept it. She wore a dark-coloured mackintosh with a belt that looked long enough to go around her twice. Her legs were bare underneath it. On her feet were a pair of tatty trainers. The way she stood suggested she was ready to run. From me? No, her gaze flicked from point to point as though looking for danger. "It's not safe for us to be standing in the open," she said. Taking my hand, she led me back to the alley. There were no lights here. The only illumination came from the street. As we entered, she tripped, shoving me against the wall. I cried out as the back of my other hand scraped on rough bricks. "Sorry, love," she said. "Let me see." I showed her my hand. I'd taken quite a bit of skin off, and a small amount of blood oozed from the wound. She touched it, and I winced at the stinging. She nuzzled my nose and kissed me gently. I touched her lips with my tongue, but she moved her head back and looked at me, studying every detail of my face. "It's you," she whispered. "It really is you." "What?" Sweat stuck my clothes to me. A vein pulsed in my hand where I'd grazed it. "Shouldn't I be saying that?" "You can if you like." "What's going on? Why did you fake your death?" She shook her head and sadness crept into her eyes. I didn't. My mouth hung open. That had to mean I died, really. Her eyes glistened. "But I came back." "Impossible," I mumbled. "Yes, that doesn't mean it isn't true." Tears stung my eyes. "Why are you lying to me? What's so secret that you couldn't trust me with it?" "There is no secret, love, at least not in that sense." I pulled away from her. "If Jenny really died, you can't be her." But she looked and sounded and felt so much like her. Why would anyone go to such lengths? What was there to gain from such deception? She sighed. "Jennifer Sandra Granger, maiden name Hathaway, born 17th of November 1967. We met on the 4th of February 1998. The attraction was mutual almost from the start. You asked me out on the 6th of March. The following evening you took me to the Star of India in Woking. You wanted to pay for everything, but I insisted on going Dutch. You persuaded me to let you buy me a drink in the mulberry bush next door. Not that I needed much persuading." She gave a hopeful smile. My teeth clenched. My heart thumped. Everything she'd said was true. I wanted to believe, but all that information is in the public domain, I said. She nodded. "What about the first time we made love, then?" "What about it?" "It was a Saturday, 3 weeks after our first date. I came to you. We were planning to go to the cinema, I don't remember which film. But as we were leaving, we looked into one another's eyes and we kissed." Her eyes took on a misty, faraway look. "That old song was right, you know. I wanted you so much. I mean, I already did, but that kiss pushed me over the edge. I think we still had some clothes left when we got to the bedroom." "A lot of couples' first times are like that," I said. My throat seemed to be full of sand. The date could have been a lucky guess. We'd made no secret of how much in love we were. She put her arms around my waist. Without thinking, I embraced her. I wanted to believe, wanted to take her home and pretend the last 15 months hadn't happened. But any second now I was going to wake up, or she was going to rip off a mask and shout, "Fooled you!" "What?" I paused, trying to think of some shared knowledge. "Your 32nd birthday," I said. "You told me it was more depressing than when you turned 30. Why was that?" 32 is a power of 2, she said. So going from 31 to 32, the number of digits you need to write it in binary increases from 5 to 6. When I worked through the maths with you, you told me to cheer up because it won't happen again until I'm 64. You gave me a vinyl copy of Bookends that year. We said we were going to visit all the places they name-checked in America. Oh, God. No one else could have known that. Blood pounded through me. She gazed into my eyes. "Now do you believe me?" I couldn't speak. I could barely nod. She rocked me back and forth as sobs heaved through me. "Hush, love, there's no need to cry." But from the way her voice trembled, I knew she was crying too. Questions battled within me. "How I managed to say. She didn't respond. Why? She put a finger to my lips. Answers can wait. For now, just accept that a miracle happened. Did you tell anyone you were meeting me tonight? No. Did you tell anyone I phoned you? No. Did anyone ask where you were going, or show, any unusual interest in you? No. Well, I don't know about the last bit. I was in Richmond today. Richmond? She stared at me as if I'd said I'd taken a day trip to Mars. What were you doing there? You haven't heard? She shook her head. It's disappeared. Disappeared? Yeah, a big chunk of London's just gone. I told her what I knew. I got the impression this wasn't the shocking news it had been to everyone else. She was surprised, yes, but more as if she'd been handed the answer to a puzzle that had been baffling her, and it had proven to be much simpler than she'd expected. Why don't you join us? I said. She coughed. I really don't think that would be a good idea, love. Why not? Being alive again, it takes a lot of getting used to. No shit. She looked down. I don't think I'm ready to go back to how we were. She kissed me softly. Look, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to have to leave you again. No! I threw my arms around her, sobbing like a child. This was how too many of my dreams ended, as the facts of my life swam into focus just before I woke up. Hush, love, hush. She rubbed my back and rocked me gently. Don't go. Please don't go. Only for a few days, she said. She let go of me and stepped back. She dug an ancient mobile phone from her pocket and pressed it into my hand. I'll call you on this in a couple of days. It looked oddly familiar, and I wondered how she'd come by it. Why all the secrecy, love? You really think my phone's tapped? I don't know, she said, frowning. I don't think it's you they're after. Of course not. Jenny had risen from the dead, apparently good as new. Who wouldn't be trying to find her if they knew she'd done that? There's a cab office down the road, that way. She put an arm around my waist, the other hand on my cheek, and pressed her lips firmly to mine. As our mouths opened, warmth spread once more from her into me. A thought struck me. This wasn't merely heat, but life. In a very real sense, I died too on the night of the crash. Jenny had somehow resurrected herself. Now she was starting on me. When we finally separated, I swayed as though drunk. Don't tell anybody you've seen me, Jenny said. I'll be in touch soon, love, I promise. This isn't goodbye, only farewell. I love you. I love you too, I whispered. Now go. Don't look back. What happens if I do? Nothing, she said. That's just the problem. I don't understand. I hope you will soon. I left the alley and walked in the direction she'd indicated. To this day I don't know why I obeyed. I heard her footsteps on the damp ground, which stopped abruptly. I paused in mid-step. As I debated whether to find out what it was she didn't want me to see, white light flashed behind me, casting a shadow of myself on the ground. Instinctively I spun round. Litter in front of the alley stirred in a sudden breeze that stopped barely a second later. Trembling, I walked down the alley as quickly as I dared. I splashed through a puddle, stirring up a stench of decay. I'd gone 30 or 40 feet when I collided with something. Metal clattered on metal as I staggered backwards. Up ahead, a dog began to bark. I reached out, finding a solid wooden gate. Patting the sides of it, I found the latch on the right. I pressed it, but the gate didn't move. The dog came nearer. As I moved my hand from the latch, about to push the gate, I touched a heavy chain that held the gate closed. How the hell had Jenny gone through the gate or over it without any noise? She could have come out of the alley and gone the opposite way from me, but I would have heard her or seen her. There had to be another way out of the alley. I turned and put a hand on each wall. As I walked back towards the street, the dog stopped barking. I felt nothing at the sides of the alley except rough brickwork. My foot caught on something. I cried out as I sprawled on the ground. The dog crashed against the gate, barking furiously. As I stood up, a light went on in an upstairs window. I hurtled down the street, not stopping until I realised I'd gone past the cab office Jenny had mentioned. I bent over, my heart hammering, sweat dripping from me. My throat felt like sandpaper. I looked up. No one had followed me, but even from here I could still hear the dog. Once I had my breath back, I entered the cab office. "Where you going, mate?" the receptionist asked. I was about to reply, "The university," and was surprised to hear myself say Rogier Street, a road that ran alongside the western edge of the campus, a third of the mile from the Heaviside Building car park. Jenny's paranoia was evidently contagious. "No problem, mate," he said, writing something in a logbook. I sat on a rickety chair with my back to the window in case whoever I'd disturbed in the alley came looking for me. My right knee and left forearm hurt from falling over. My left hand still stung from scraping it off the wall. My head filled with, "She's alive, she's alive." I took out the phone she'd given me, turning it over and over. I couldn't shake the feeling I'd seen it before. It must have been a model that had sold well. Jennifer Sandra Granger, maiden name Hathaway. That kiss pushed me over the edge. It's you. It's really you. That had to be the oddest part of the whole thing. Why on earth would she think my identity was in question? "Your taxi's here, mate," the receptionist said. Thanks for listening to that excerpt of my novel Escape Velocity. If you'd like to know more or find out where to buy a copy, please visit my website at www.pembers.net. Thanks.